At approximately 12:35 p.m. on Monday, November 13th, a crew member aboard the oil tanker Gulf Lion observed a man waving frantically from a dinghy drifting in their direction and shouting, "Help! I have a dead baby on board." Pulling the man aboard, crew members observed the deceased body of a red-haired prepubescent girl wearing a life jacket inside the dinghy. The man identified himself as Julian Harvey, skipper of the ketch Bluebelle. Harvey explained that at approximately 8:30 the previous evening, his small vessel was hit by a sudden, strong squall that caused the Bluebelle to rapidly keel over and the main mast to snap at a location between the Abaco Islands and Great Stirrup Cay, slightly injuring his wife. According to Harvey, he was separated from all others on board the ketch by this falling mast and the resultant loose rigging, which pulled down the mizzen. He attempted to retrieve a wire cutter from the cabin to clear the deck space, but a sudden fire broke out on board the small vessel, and he was not able to rescue his wife or any of his passengers. Forced to abandon the ketch alone on a dinghy, the body of 7-year-old Renee Duperrault had soon floated by, and he had retrieved her body and attempted to revive the child. Unsuccessful in this medical effort, he had kept her body alongside him in the raft out of respect. An autopsy later revealed the child had died of drowning. Taken to Nassau, Harvey was questioned by authorities. Although his calm demeanor and the fact his dinghy had been filled with various survival supplies caused some to initially express serious doubts as to his claims, Harvey's story could not be disproven, and he was allowed to return to Miami on November 15th to face further questioning by the U.S. Coast Guard. The Northwest Providence Channel by the Greek freighter Captain Theo. Second Officer Nikolaos Spachidakis observed her floating aboard a 2-by-5-foot cork float approximately 1 mile from the freighter. Spachidakis immediately summoned Captain Stylianos Koutsidontis to the bridge, and the two gradually realized Spachidakis' sighting was not a fishing vessel, but a small, oblong white raft carrying a young blonde-haired child dressed in a white cotton blouse and pink corduroy slacks, leaning backward and waving feebly. The captain ordered the freighter's engine stopped and a life raft lowered. Noting sharks circling close to the cork float, crew members shouted at the child not to jump into the water while one crew member, Evangelos Kantsilas, lifted the child aboard the raft. She was then hoisted aboard the Captain Theo and placed in a spare cabin. Aboard the freighter, the crew rapidly discovered the child was incoherent and barely able to speak. She was given water and orange juice as salt was sponged from her body with wet towels and Vaseline applied to her lips. She hoarsely identified herself as 11-year-old Terri Jo Duperrault, informing the crew that she had been floating aboard the cork float for several days after the sinking of her vessel. Her ability to speak rapidly waned, and the child soon responded to questions by weakly gesticulating, before lapsing into a semi-comatose state. The crew of the Captain Theo did not retrieve the cork float upon which Terri Jo had drifted for almost 4 days. However, a member of the Coast Guard did locate and retrieve the raft from the ocean several days later. The raft had almost fallen apart and almost immediately began to disintegrate in the hands of this individual. Recuperation Edit The captain of the Captain Theo immediately informed the United States Coast Guard of their discovery and the child's medical predicament, and a rescue helicopter was soon summoned. Terri Jo, suffering from severe sunburn, dehydration, and exposure, was airlifted to hospital in a critical condition.
Behind these windows of Mercy Hospital overlooking Biscayne Bay lies little Terri Jo Duperrault, still recovering from her ordeal aboard the ketch Bluebelle.
In the aftermath of the harrowing events that unfolded on the ill-fated Bluebelle boat, the truth began to unravel, revealing a tale of deception and despair. Harvey, a man burdened by his own dark secrets, found himself entangled in a web of lies that would ultimately lead to his tragic demise. As the United States Coast Guard investigators delved deeper into the mysterious circumstances surrounding Renee's death, Harvey's account of the incident seemed to crumble under scrutiny. His claims of a violent squall wreaking havoc upon the vessel, causing irreparable damage, were met with skepticism. However, the revelation of Terri Jo's miraculous rescue proved to be the final blow to Harvey's fragile facade. The news of her survival struck him like a thunderbolt, shattering the fragile illusion he had carefully constructed. The weight of his guilt and the fear of exposure became too much to bear. Seeking solace in anonymity, Harvey sought refuge in a nondescript motel, adopting an assumed name to shield himself from the prying eyes of the world. The room, a temporary sanctuary, became a haunting reflection of his tormented mind. The walls seemed to close in, mirroring the suffocating grip of his guilt. In the depths of his despair, Harvey's trembling hands clutched a razor blade, a chilling instrument of his own demise.
Of the circumstances whereby these lives were lost, or the order in which they perished, cannot be ascertained. It is further concluded that the motives for the acts of Julian A. Harvey cannot be ascertained. However, the fact that he was the sole beneficiary of his wife's insurance policy.
It is believed Harvey planned to kill his wife to collect on her $20,000 double indemnity insurance policy, but he was observed by Dr. Duperrault and then had to kill him, his wife, and 2 of his children, who may have witnessed his murder. It was later found that Harvey had survived a car accident that claimed another of his 6 wives and her mother, and that his yacht Torbatros, his powerboat, had sunk under suspicious circumstances, yielding large insurance settlements. Mystery writer Earl Stanley Gardner, among others, wondered why Harvey did not kill Terri Jo. Gardner speculated that Harvey may have wanted to be caught and punished. Survival psychologist Richard Logan theorized that Harvey had intended to kill her, but when she accidentally dropped the rope that was connected to his dinghy, so he was forced to dive overboard in order to prevent its floating away without him, and thus left her alive on the sinking ship. Many years later, she stated in a television interview with Matt Lauer, "I think he probably thought I would go down with the ship." Terri Jo went and lived with her aunt and uncle that raised her. She considered them to this day to be her mother and father since the murder in 1961.